414 SM-3 missiles. China has 525 DF-26s ready to launch. Tonight, we reveal what Beijing already calculated.
America canceled 153 SM-3s to save $1.9 billion. Now the Pacific is exposed, and China is watching every number.
At 2:14 a.m. local time on March 3rd, 2026, somewhere in the Western Pacific, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer on patrol east of Guam, held in its vertical launch system, sells a finite number of Standard Missile, 3 Block IIA interceptors, the most capable ship-launched ballistic missile defense weapon the United States Navy operates. Each of those missiles cost $28 million. Each had taken years to build. Each represented a piece of a stockpile that, as of December 2025, stood at 414 rounds total for every U.S. warship, every Aegis ashore installation, and every allied nation drawing on American resupply across every ocean on Earth. 5,000 miles to the west, in the Persian Gulf, those same interceptors were being used against Iranian ballistic missiles at a rate that no procurement budget in recent American history had been designed to absorb. And in Beijing, at a distance that is not accidental, the People's Liberation Army Rocket Force was watching every launch, every expenditure, and every number being burned down. What happened next exposed a vulnerability that defense planners had spent years pretending did not exist. The SM-3 is not a complicated concept, but its execution is extraordinary. Is a hit-to-kill interceptor. It carries no explosive warhead. Its kill vehicle is released in the terminal phase of flight and physically smashes into the incoming ballistic missile with the force of a 10-ton truck traveling at 600 miles per hour. The Block IIA variant, developed in cooperation with Japan and manufactured by Raytheon, is optimized for the Indo-Pacific theater, with greater range, a larger kill vehicle, and enhanced terminal velocity, capable of defeating advanced intermediate-range ballistic missiles. It operates from Arleigh Burke destroyers, Ticonderoga cruisers, and fixed Aegis ashore sites in Romania and Poland, and it is the centerpiece of the American ballistic missile defense architecture in Europe and Asia. During the first days of Operation Epic Fury, between February 28th and March 3rd, 2026, U.S. Navy warships operating in the Arabian Sea, the Persian Gulf, and the Eastern Mediterranean each fired between 4 and 7 SM-3s per engagement to intercept incoming Iranian ballistic missiles, single engagements costing, according to analysts at Responsible Statecraft, between $52 million and $196 million per salvo. That was one engagement. There were dozens more that week. And that is where the math starts to get dangerous. The arithmetic visible in those first days of Operation Epic Fury did not begin in 2026. It began in a Pentagon budget office in the spring of 2024 when an entry appeared in the FY 2025 defense budget proposal that received almost no public attention, but which Mackenzie Eaglin of the American Enterprise Institute described, writing in the national interest, as a procurement decision whose consequences would fall squarely on those in uniform. That entry canceled the planned procurement of 153 SM-3 Block IB interceptors over 5 years, saving $1.9 billion, without reinvesting a single dollar of those savings into increased Block IIA production. The Block IIA procurement line, the successor that was supposed to replace the canceled IB, was held flat at 12 missiles per year through fiscal year 2029. 12 per year. To put that number in operational context, during the June 2025 12-day war between Israel and Iran, the United States expended approximately 80 SM-3s in 12 days of combat, according to CISA's December 2025 analysis. At 12 missiles manufactured per year, replacing those 80 rounds from single 12-day conflict would require 6.5 years of uninterrupted Block IIA production. And Operation Epic Fury had been consuming SM-3s for 7 days and counting. They didn't lose this advantage in battle. They legislated it away, line item by line item. But the stockpile problem was only half the equation. The other half was time and who was using it. Inside the Pentagon's earring on March 4, 2026, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Dan Kane addressed reporters about the state of the American munitions inventory with a precision that was itself a form of disclosure. "We have sufficient precision munitions for the task at hand," he said, "but I want to tell you, as a matter of practice, I don't want to be talking about quantities." That sentence, crafted to project confidence while simultaneously declining to provide the numbers that would test it, was immediately parsed by every defense analyst in Washington and every intelligence analyst in Beijing who was monitoring it. Because the quantities, in fact, had been published. The CSIS Missile Defense Project had released its analysis, the Depleting Missile Defense Interceptor Inventory, in December 2025. Wes Rumbaugh, a fellow at SIZE, stated plainly, the biggest problem remains longer-term procurement numbers. Both of the last two budget requests proposed ending production of the SM-3IB variant in favor of the II, sacrificing capacity for capability. That decision constrained the Missile Defense Agency's ability to replace interceptors used in other theaters. As of December 2025, the total U.S. arsenal of SM-3s stood at 414 rounds. A January 2026 Heritage Foundation report had already concluded that high-end interceptors, including the SM-3, SM-6, PAC-3 MSE, and THAAD would likely be exhausted within days of sustained combat in a major peer-level conflict, with some systems depleted after just 2 to 3 major PLA salvos. Aggregate U.S. vertical launch system inventories, an estimated 17,000 rounds, were assessed as insufficient for even one full fleet reload. Peer-side rearming creates multi-week gaps. Resupply is constrained by an estimated 500 underway replenishment operations per day and 14 to 21-day transit times. The report identified systemic defensive failure within 30 to 60 days of high-intensity peer conflict as a credible scenario. Those findings had been published to the public in January 2026. They were also available in Beijing. Then analysts ran a scenario that no one in the room wanted to discuss out loud. From the perspective of the PLA rocket force at its headquarters in Beijing, the events unfolding in the Persian Gulf in March 2026 were not simply a regional conflict between the United States and Iran. They were a data collection event of the first order. Every SM-3 fired against an Iranian Zulfiqar or Fateh, 110 ballistic missile was a round subtracted from a finite stockpile that China had studied in detail. China's anti-ship ballistic missile architecture, the DF-21D carrier killer with a range exceeding 1,450 kilometers, the DF-26 Guam killer with a range between 3,000 and 5,500 kilometers, the DF-17 hypersonic glide vehicle, and the newly confirmed DF-27 conventionally armed ICBM ranging Hawaii and Alaska, had been engineered across 2 decades of sustained investment, specifically to overwhelm American Aegis ballistic missile defense in the Pacific. According to the Pentagon's December 2025 annual report to Congress on Chinese military power, China possesses the world's largest inventory of hypersonic missiles and the world's most active and diverse ballistic missile development program. The PLA rocket force fields at least 7 brigades of DF-26 intermediate-range ballistic missiles, with analysis suggesting each brigade possesses at least 25 launchers supported by transport vehicles carrying 3 missiles in reserve per launcher, enabling 75 missile salvos per brigade. 7 brigades. That is a theoretical opening salvo capacity of 525 DF-26 missiles from a single missile class. Against a USSM-3 stockpile of 414 rounds. The arithmetic does not require a war game to compute, but one was run anyway. In wargaming scenarios modeled by Air University researchers and published in 2025, coalition forces defending Taiwan in a sustained conflict scenario face the core challenge of surviving China's Joint Fires campaign. The PLA's documented first-phase strategy of neutralizing air bases, command nodes, and naval assets across the first and second island chains using precision ballistic missiles before amphibious operations begin. RAND Corporation analyses of Taiwan Strait conflict scenarios published in the preceding years found consistently that U.S. forces would face severe munitions consumption pressure in the opening days of any high-intensity exchange. The January 2026 Heritage Foundation report put the depletion timeline explicitly. Some systems exhausted after just 2 to 3 major PLA salvos. In a conflict that China's own official doctrine describes as beginning with a massive, simultaneous precision strike campaign, 2 to 3 salvos is not an extended engagement. It is an opening statement. The geographic dimension of that vulnerability extended in every direction simultaneously. At Guam, home to Andersen Air Force Base, the forward bomber hub for any Pacific conflict, the U.S. military had invested in dedicated air defense infrastructure specifically because PLA planners had designated it a priority target. The DF-26 is known in open-source defense analysis as the Guam Killer for a reason. Its 3,000 to 500-kilometer range brackets the island from mainland China. As of December 2025, the Pentagon had confirmed the DF-27's operational capability and its range of up to 8,000 kilometers, placing Hawaii, Alaska, and portions of a U.S. West Coast within striking distance of a conventional, non-nuclear first strike. In the Aegis ashore installation in Romania, positioned to defend NATO's eastern flank against Russian ballistic missiles, and the installation in Poland, the SM-3 Block IIA, is the sole intercept layer. Both sites drew from the same 414-round global stockpile, whose depletion was currently being accelerated at the rate of multiple missiles per engagement in the Persian Gulf. At Yokosuka Naval Base in Japan, forward-deployed Aegis destroyers, the on-station ballistic missile defense layer for the Japanese mainland, carried SM-3s from the same inventory. In the waters of the Arabian Sea, in Mediterranean, and off the coast of Qatar they were being fired. And in the South China Sea, where 3,570 Chinese military aircraft had made incursions into Taiwan's surrounding airspace in 2025 alone, a record documented by Taiwan's National Security Bureau. The ships that would need to be there were not there because they were needed in CENTCOM. That calculation repeated itself in every theater simultaneously. If the trajectory does not change, the window that China's 2027 strategic planning timeline was built around does not close on its own. The PLA's 2027 Centennial Military Building Goal, documented in the Pentagon's December 2025 China Military Power Report, which assessed that China expects to achieve the capability for strategic decisive victory over Taiwan by that year, was not a deadline announced to intimidate. It was a production and readiness milestone against which every procurement decision, every exercise cycle, and every intelligence assessment of American magazine depth had been calibrated. China's official defense budget had nearly doubled since the first full year of Xi Jinping's tenure. Its nuclear stockpile grew from the low 200s in 2020 to over 600 operational warheads by the end of 2024, on track to exceed 1,000 by 2030. The PLA Navy aimed to field 9 aircraft carriers by 2035, per the same Pentagon report. And while the United States was ordering 12 SM-3 Block IIAs per year and debating supplemental budgets to replace what was being fired over Iran, China was producing the world's most active and diverse ballistic missile program at a pace that no American procurement office had been sized to match. As the Asia Times reported on March 4, 2026, citing current and former American defense officials, the high expenditure of SM-3 and Tomahawk missiles during Operation Epic Fury risked a Winchester scenario, complete ammunition depletion, that could force the U.S. to divert stocks from the Pacific, compromising military readiness against China to sustain ongoing Mediterranean and Persian Gulf operations. Senator Mark Kelly, a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, stated it directly during an interview with CNN. If our magazine depth goes to zero, and they can then shoot at us unimpeded, we get into trouble here, possibly really quickly. Here are the numbers as of March 6, 2026, 7 days into Operation Epic Fury. US SM-3 stockpile as of December 2025 for 114 interceptors. SM-3s expended in the June 2025 12-day war alone, approximately 80. SM-3s plus SM-SXS fired during the Red Sea campaign and the 12-day war combined from October 2023 through June 2025, approximately 159 SM-3s and 280 SM-SXS per responsible statecraft analysis. Production of new SM-3s from January 2024 through June 2025, 87 total, per the same analysis. Net change in SM-3 stockpile, a 33% decrease since 2023. SM-3 Block IIA production authorized in the FY 2025 budget, 12 per year. Block IIA unit cost, $28 million per missile. SM-3 Block IB production authorized in the same budget, 0, down from a previously planned 153 over 5 years. Cost of canceling those 153 IBs, $1.9 billion in savings not reinvested. PLA-DF, 26 salvo capacity per brigade, 75 missiles. Number of DF, 26 brigades confirmed operational, at least 7. Total theoretical DF, 26 opening salvo, 525 missiles from one system family alone. Pentagon's assessment of U.S. VLS inventory adequacy for one full fleet reload, insufficient. The solutions under confirmed development are documented and real, but not yet deployed at the scale this deficit demands. The FY 2026 reconciliation bill authorized an additional 12 THAAD interceptors beyond the base budget, bringing the total to 37 for the year, a measure Kelly Grieco of the Stimson Center assessed as meaningful but far below what sustained conflict requires. The AEI's Mackenzie Eaglin, writing on March 3, 2026, called on Congress to reverse the Navy's decision and fully restore SM-3 Block IB production until the IA could be ramped up to adequate volume, a practical step that would require a contract restart, industrial retooling, and a multi-year funding commitment. The Trump administration had also summoned major defense contractors to the White House on March 7 to discuss production acceleration. Japan, co-developer of the SM-3 Block IIA and host to forward-deployed Aegis assets, represented the most operationally ready allied production partner for any accelerated manufacturing effort. Taiwan's proposed $40 billion T-Dome special defense budget, covering 2026 to 2033 and targeting island-wide ballistic missile defense, aligned directly with the deficit that American interceptor shortfalls created, but was facing blockage in the opposition-controlled legislative yuan as of January 2026. Every delay in that legislation was a delay in closing the gap that the PLA's 2027 calendar was designed to exploit. This story is not just about missiles and money. The most expensive weapon system in the world is worthless the moment its magazine runs empty. For decades, American maritime power in the Pacific rested on an assumption that has never been operationally tested at the scale China can now deliver, that the Aegis combat system, the SM-3 intercept chain, and the layered missile defense architecture protecting carrier strike groups, forward bases, and allied capitals could absorb whatever volume of ballistic missile fire a peer adversary chose to generate. What Operation Epic Fury demonstrated, in real time, with real inventory numbers against a second-tier adversary by comparison to China's PLA rocket force, is that the magazine has a bottom. Power does not always announce itself with a decisive battle. Sometimes it arrives in a procurement cancellation, in a production line held flat at 12 missiles per year, in the slow arithmetic of expenditure rates that exceed replacement rates until the deficit becomes irreversible. The most dangerous gap in any defense system is not in the radar coverage, not in the kill chain. It is in the assumption that the adversary hasn't already counted what's left. If you're still watching, tap like so more people understand what's actually at stake in the Pacific right now. Comment Winchester if you think the production gap deserves more attention than it's getting. Share this with anyone who still believes the U.S. Navy's dominance in the Pacific is unconditional and permanent. Because the most dangerous assumption a superpower can make is not that it could be defeated. It is that the enemy is too patient, too methodical, or too far away to have already calculated the exact number of missiles required to make that assumption obsolete. China has done that calculation. The production logs are public. The stockpile figures are published. And the only remaining question is whether the industrial response comes before 2027 or after the magazine runs empty.